You know, there's a kind of silence that lives inside old houses. It isn't lonely, it's just waiting. Waiting for footsteps that don't come anymore. For laughter that used to spill out of the kitchen. My house was like that too. Until one day my daughter-in-law held my hand again. It wasn't a grand moment. No music, no crowd, no words. Just two women, sitting in the same room after months of hurt. And one touch that said everything words couldn't. But to understand that day, you have to know what came before it. The love, the silence, and all the small things that broke us apart. Before we begin, if you enjoy stories that touch the heart and remind us of life's quiet miracles, don't forget to like this video and subscribe. It truly helps our little storytelling family grow. I still remember the sound this old house used to make when it was full. The screen door slamming shut, the soft hum of my husband's radio, the giggle of kids running down the hallway. That was my world once. Now those same sounds are just memories echoing through the walls. I live on the edge of a small town in Ohio, the kind of place where folks still wave when they drive by, and the postman knows your dog's name. The morning smell of coffee and cut grass, and the evenings are quiet except for crickets and the hum of a porch light. After my husband passed, this house became more than a home. It became my company. Every creak in the floorboards, every clock chime, felt like the house was talking back to me. I'd sweep the porch, water the little garden by the fence, and light a candle by his photograph every evening. That was my rhythm, steady, quiet, familiar. Our son Daniel works in the city now, Columbus. He calls when he can, visits when work allows. He's a good boy. Always has been. Polite, hardworking, thoughtful. He takes after his father, same gentle heart, same quiet eyes. When he told me he was getting married, I felt two things at once, happiness and fear. Happiness because every mother dreams of seeing her child settled, and fear because I knew what it meant for another woman to step into this old rhythm of mine. Change. And change doesn't come easy to people like me. Her name was Emily. When he first told me about her, he said, "Mom, she's kind. You'll love her." And when she came home after the wedding, in a pale blue dress, hair tucked behind her ears, eyes full of both hope and nervousness, I did love her right away. She was sweet, quiet, a little unsure. The first few weeks after the wedding were full of laughter and noise. Relatives dropping by, neighbors bringing pies, friends calling to say congratulations. Emily would stand beside me in the kitchen, helping slice fruit, trying to remember where I kept things. She called me Mom in that soft, respectful way that melted my heart every time. Everyone said, "You're lucky, Ruth. She's a keeper." And I believed them. When the house finally grew quiet again, I realized for the first time that I wasn't alone anymore. Not really. There was another heartbeat in this place now. I could hear her moving around the kitchen, humming softly, getting used to the drawers and cupboards. Sometimes she'd burn toast and laugh about it, cheeks pink with embarrassment. Sometimes she'd make me tea without asking, and we'd sit on the porch watching the sky turn gold. I liked those moments. They felt like sunlight after a long winter. But you know how it is. When two women share one roof, even love can rub against pride. First, I gently correct her. "Sweetheart, we usually keep the sugar on the counter." Or, "That's not quite how I fold the towels." And she'd nod, smile, say, "Oh, okay, Mom." Always polite. Always gentle. But too gentle, maybe, like someone walking carefully around another person's shadow. I tried to tell her stories about Daniel's childhood, about how he used to eat peanut butter straight from the jar or hide frogs in his pockets. She'd laugh softly, but never too much. There was something guarded in her, like she wanted to fit in but didn't want to take up too much space. Over time, the house began to carry her touch. The way she arranged flowers, the new curtains she hung, the candle scents she liked. Everything smelled of her now. It was nice, but it also reminded me that things were changing, faster than I was ready for. And though we smiled every day, there was a small distance between us. A kind one, polite one, the kind that doesn't show until the laughter fades. I didn't know then that the same girl who once held my arm while crossing the street would one day pass by me in silence. The morning Emily moved in, sunlight hit the kitchen just right, golden on the countertops, soft on the curtains. I remember thinking maybe this is what peace feels like. For the first few weeks, it really did feel that way. We cooked together, baked pies on Sundays, and cleaned the garden side by side. Sometimes she'd hum along with the radio while I washed dishes, and I'd join in without realizing. It was nice. Like the house was learning to breathe again. In the evenings, Daniel would come home from work, tired but smiling. We'd all sit together. Emily on one side, me on the other, dinner warm, laughter easy. Felt like a family again. Something I hadn't felt since my husband passed. But change has a quiet way of creeping in. Not with a bang, but with small, ordinary moments. One morning, I came into the kitchen and noticed the coffee pot had been moved. The sugar jar too. The old lace doily I'd kept by the sink was gone. "Emily," I asked gently, "did you move things around a bit?" She turned and smiled. "Oh yeah, I thought it might be easier this way." Her tone was kind, but something inside me tightened. It was my kitchen, the one I'd known like the back of my hand for 30 years. And suddenly, it felt like someone else's hands were rewriting it. It wasn't her fault, but I started noticing everything. The new hand soap she bought. The way she folded towels differently. The new candles that replaced the old photographs on the table. Little things. So small that even mentioning them would make me sound unreasonable. So I didn't. I just kept quiet. Then one afternoon, I heard her on the phone. She was talking to her mom, her voice soft. "I'm fine, Mom. She's nice, just kind of old-fashioned, you know?" I froze. Old-fashioned. That word sat heavy in my chest all evening. I didn't say anything, but when I went to bed that night, I looked at my husband's picture and whispered, "Old-fashioned, maybe I am." After that, I pulled back a little. If she cooked, I let her. If she cleaned, I didn't move a thing. Our conversations became fewer, polite, careful, almost rehearsed. When Daniel was home, it was fine. But when it was just us, the silence felt thick, like the air before a storm. Then one evening, Emily came to me and said, "Mom, Daniel's company offered him a place in the city. He wants me to go with him for a few months." She looked nervous, almost guilty. I forced a smile and said, "Of course, sweetheart. You should be with him." She smiled, nodded, and hugged me. A soft, brief hug that felt like goodbye. The day they left, I stood by the front porch and waved until their car disappeared down the road. The sun was setting, and the street was quiet again. Too quiet. For weeks after that, I kept catching myself making too much food, folding extra laundry, setting 3 plates instead of 1. Habit, I guess. The house felt emptier than ever. Not because of silence, but because the silence had meaning now. Sometimes Daniel would call. "Mom, how are you doing? Emily says hi." I'd answer, "I'm fine, honey." Tell her I said hello. And that was it. Polite, kind, distant. Then one rainy afternoon months later, I heard the sound of a car in the driveway. When I opened the door, there she was, standing on the porch, rain dripping from her coat, suitcase in hand, eyes full of something I couldn't read. She was home again, but not for the reasons I expected. The day Emily came back, the sky was gray and heavy, like it had been holding its breath all morning. I remember wiping my hands on the apron as I opened the door. There she stood, shivering a little, rain clinging to her hair, suitcase beside her. For a second, neither of us spoke. Just the sound of rain tapping on the porch roof. Then she said quietly, "Hi, Mom." Her voice, it was small, careful, like she wasn't sure if she still had the right to call me that. I nodded and stepped aside. "Come in, sweetheart. You'll catch a cold out there." She smiled, a tired, polite smile, and walked past me into the living room. Everything was just as she had left it, though she probably didn't notice. Her favorite candle still sat by the window, half burned. The curtain she'd picked still hung in the kitchen. It was as if time had just paused, waiting for her to return. I made tea because that's what women like me do when we don't know what else to say. We make tea. It's safer than words. We sat across from each other at the kitchen table. The clock ticked softly on the wall. I slid her the cup and said, "So how's Daniel?" She looked down at her hands before answering. "He's okay. Still in the city. He's been really busy lately." Her words were even, but her eyes told a different story. Tired, lost, a little hollow. I wanted to ask more. I wanted to ask why she was here without him, but I didn't. Instead I said, "You must be tired from the drive." She nodded. "Yeah, it's been a long few weeks." We sipped our tea in silence. Outside, the rain turned heavier, beating softly against the windows. Inside, the only sound was the ticking of that old kitchen clock. Steady, relentless, like time itself was listening. That night, I set up her old room again. Fresh sheets, folded towels, the same little lamp she liked. I caught myself fluffing her pillow twice, like I used to when she first moved in. It was strange how easily old habits come back when the heart wants to forgive. When I passed by her door later, the light was still on. I paused for a moment thinking about knocking but didn't. Something told me she needed space. And maybe so did I. The next morning I found her sitting on the porch, wrapped in a blanket, staring at the gray horizon. She didn't hear me at first, just sat there, lost in thought. When I joined her, she smiled faintly and said, "Do you ever notice how quiet this town is? Like it's holding on to every sound before letting it go." I chuckled softly. It's always been that way. The quiet here, it listens. For a while we just sat there, two women, one young, one old, both a little broken. Then she said something that made my heart ache. "Mom, I don't think Daniel and I are doing so well." Her voice trembled on the last word. I turned to her, but she kept her eyes fixed on the horizon. She took a deep breath. "We've been fighting a lot. About small things. About everything. He's busy, I get it, but it's like we stopped being on the same side." She looked down at her hands, twisting her wedding ring slowly. I thought maybe some time here would help me think. I wanted to reach out and hold her hand right then, but I didn't. Maybe pride, maybe fear. Instead I said gently, "This house has a way of clearing heads. Maybe it'll help you find what you're looking for." She nodded, eyes glistening, and whispered, "I just don't want to lose him." And something in me broke a little. Because in that moment, I didn't see her as my daughter-in-law anymore. I saw her as a woman, young, scared, trying so hard to hold something together with trembling hands. Over the next few days, we fell into a soft, wordless rhythm again. Morning coffee on the porch. Laundry hung out to dry. Dinner and quiet company. It wasn't like before, not yet, but it was something. One evening, as I was washing dishes, she came up beside me and started drying them without being asked. Just like she used to. Neither of us said a word. But every small movement, the clink of the plates, the steam from the sink, felt like an apology neither of us knew how to say. Then one night something happened, something simple, but it stays with me even now. It was late. The power had gone out from a storm. The whole house was dark, except for the candles we lit. I was trying to find a matchbox when my hand brushed hers by accident. For a moment we both froze. Then, without thinking, she reached out and took my hand. Not in apology, not in fear, but in warmth. Her hand was trembling a little. So was mine. But we didn't let go. We stood there, two women in the dark, holding on, not just to each other, but to everything we'd lost between us. And in that quiet, flickering light, I realized something. Sometimes love doesn't come with grand words or long speeches. Sometimes it comes as a touch, gentle, hesitant, and real. That night I didn't cry. I just whispered a thank you to her, to life, to the silence that finally turned into peace. When the lights came back, we both laughed, softly, awkwardly, but together. And for the first time in months, the house didn't feel quiet anymore. It felt alive again. It had been a week since Emily came back home. By then, the air in the house had started to change. It wasn't heavy anymore. It was softer, like the first breeze after a long storm. She had begun to smile again. Small smiles, but they meant something. She'd hum while folding laundry, talk about the garden, ask if we could bake that old family pie recipe again. I could tell she was trying. And so was I. One afternoon, I was up in the attic sorting through some old boxes. Dust floated in the air like tiny ghosts, catching the light from the small window. Most of those boxes hadn't been touched in years. Keepsakes, old photos, things too precious to throw away but too painful to look at. I was halfway through a box labeled, "Arjun's college stuff." No, wait. In this version his name's Daniel, right? Yes, Daniel's college stuff. Inside I found his old baseball cap, a graduation tassel, some report cards, and a folded piece of paper tucked in a notebook. It looked old, creased, like it had been opened and closed many times. Curious, I unfolded it. At the top, in Daniel's handwriting, were the words, "To Mom, but maybe I'll never send this." I froze. For a moment, I didn't know if I should keep reading. But a mother's heart doesn't obey logic. It obeys love. So I read, "Mom, sometimes I think I'm still learning how to be a good man. You always made it look so easy being strong, kind, patient. I didn't realize how hard that is until now. Emily and I fight sometimes. Not big fights, just enough to leave small cracks that don't heal right away. She wants to make a home the way she knows how, and I want to keep things the way you taught me. And in between all that, we both get tired. I know you mean well when you tell me to take care of her, but sometimes I think she's the one taking care of me. She's stubborn like you. And she tries so hard to make everyone happy that she forgets to rest. If she ever comes home without me, Mom, don't think it's because she stopped caring. It'll only be because she's hurting, and she doesn't know how to say it. So please be gentle with her. She's trying just like me." By the time I finished reading, my hands were trembling. I pressed the letter to my chest and sat there in that dusty attic, listening to the sound of rain on the roof again. All those months I'd felt forgotten. All those nights I'd thought my son had changed. And here was his heart right on paper. He hadn't changed. He was just caught between two women he loved in different ways. And both of us, in our own pride and pain, had forgotten that love isn't a contest. It's a bridge. I wiped my eyes and went downstairs quietly. Emily was in the kitchen, cutting vegetables, her hair tied up, soft music playing on her phone. I watched her for a moment. The same girl I once thought had taken my son away. And now I realized she was just trying to find a place to belong, too. I walked in slowly and said, "Emily, honey, can we talk for a minute?" She looked up a little startled. "Of course," she said, setting down the knife. I handed her the letter. Her eyes widened when she saw Daniel's handwriting. Her lips parted, but she didn't speak, just began to read. As she did, tears filled her eyes. She covered her mouth with one hand, trying not to cry out loud. When she finished, she looked at me. Eyes red, face trembling, and whispered, "He wrote this? For you." I nodded. "Maybe. Or maybe for both of us." She sat down, shaking her head. "I didn't know he felt this way. We've been so lost. I thought maybe he stopped caring." I pulled out the chair beside her and sat. "Sweetheart," I said softly, "sometimes men don't know how to say the things they feel. They leave their hearts scattered, in small gestures, half-written letters, and quiet sacrifices. But it's there. Always." Emily let out a long, shaky breath and said, "I've made mistakes too, Mom. I should have called you more. I should have tried harder." I reached over and placed my hand over hers, and this time she didn't pull away. "It's okay, honey," I whispered. "We both made mistakes. But we're here now. That's what matters." She leaned into me then, tears slipping silently down her cheeks. And I held her, not as my daughter-in-law, but as my daughter. Because in that moment, that's exactly what she was. That night, after she'd gone to bed, I sat by the window with a cup of tea. The moonlight fell across the old letter on the table. I read it one last time before tucking it into a drawer. Not to hide it, but to keep it safe. And for the first time in a long, long while, I felt peace. Because now I knew my son hadn't forgotten us. He had loved us both, even in silence. And through that love, somehow we'd found our way back to each other. It was a quiet Sunday morning. The kind of morning that makes you want to sit a little longer with your coffee and listen to the birds on the porch. Emily was making pancakes in the kitchen. The smell of butter and maple syrup filled the air. And for the first time in months, the house actually felt like home again. There was laughter, small, gentle laughter, the kind that doesn't need to be loud to be real. We were setting the table when the phone rang. I remember the sound of it, sharp, sudden, cutting through the peaceful air. Emily reached for it first. "Hello." Her voice was light, unaware of what was coming. Then her face changed. Her smile faded. She turned slightly away, holding the phone close. "Yes, this is Emily." There was a long pause. Her hand trembled. "Yes, he's my husband." What happened?" My heart stopped. I could hear the faint murmur of a man's voice on the other end, low and serious. Emily's eyes filled with tears before she even spoke again. She turned to me, her face pale as paper. "It's Daniel," she whispered. "There's been an accident." The world seemed to tilt. The kitchen, the light, the smell of pancakes, everything blurred. I gripped the back of the chair just to stay standing. The next few hours were a blur of phone calls, prayers, and rushing. We drove to the city hospital in silence. the road stretching endlessly before us. Emily held Daniel's photo in her lap the whole way, whispering his name over and over like a prayer. When we reached the hospital, time stopped. The smell of antiseptic, the sound of footsteps on tile floors, the endless waiting. It all felt unreal. But when the doctor finally came out, his expression said everything before his words did. "Your son is stable," he said quietly. "It was close, but he's going to make it." Emily broke down, sobbing into her hands. And I just stood there, my knees weak with relief, whispering thank you again and again to God, to life, to fate. When we were allowed to see him, Daniel looked pale but peaceful. Tubes and wires surrounded him, but his chest rose and fell, steady, strong. I touched his forehead and whispered, "You scared us, sweetheart." He smiled weakly, his eyes fluttering open. "Mom," he murmured. "I'm sorry." I shook my head, tears spilling freely now. No, you just rest, okay? That's all I need." Emily was standing at the foot of the bed, trying to hold herself together. Daniel looked at her then, eyes soft, voice hoarse. "You came." She nodded, unable to speak, and took his hand. And when she did, something in that room shifted. It was like all the walls we had built, of pride, hurt, misunderstanding, melted away in one heartbeat. For the first time, we were all just family again. The days that followed were quiet but full of meaning. Emily stayed by his side, helping the nurses, feeding him soup, reading him the notes people sent. I watched from the corner, sometimes joining, sometimes just smiling to myself. One afternoon, while Daniel was asleep, Emily turned to me and said, "You know, I kept thinking we were falling apart, but maybe we were just finding our way back." I smiled. "Sometimes, honey, it takes a storm to see how strong the roots are." She nodded, eyes glistening. "Mom," she whispered, "thank you for not giving up on me." I reached over and brushed a strand of hair from her face. "Sweetheart, I think we both learned something the hard way. Family isn't about being perfect. It's about staying when it's hard." A few weeks later, Daniel came home. He was still recovering, but the house felt alive again. Laughter, clinking dishes, the sound of footsteps in the hall. The porch swing squeaked like it used to. Even the old dog wagged his tail again. One evening as the sun went down, we sat outside, the three of us, watching the light fade behind the hills. Daniel reached over and took Emily's hand. She smiled, leaning her head against his shoulder. I looked at them, and for a long time I didn't say a word. Because I didn't need to. Sometimes love doesn't need fixing. It just needs time and forgiveness to remember what it was built on. As I sat there, the wind brushed my hair, carrying the smell of blooming magnolias from the yard. I thought back to that night in the dark kitchen, when Emily first held my hand. Back then, it was a moment of forgiveness. But now, watching her hold my son's hand, it felt like a full circle. A moment of grace. Later, when she went inside, Daniel turned to me. "Mom," he said softly, "thank you for taking care of her." I smiled, looking out at the sky. "No, sweetheart. She took care of me." He chuckled, wincing a little from the stitches, and I reached over, touching his arm. "We're okay now," I said. "We're finally okay." And for the first time in a long while, my heart believed it. That night, after everyone had gone to bed, I stood by the kitchen window, staring at the porch where we'd shared so many silences. Only now, those silences didn't hurt. They felt full of memory, forgiveness, and love that had weathered the storm. I smiled to myself and whispered, "The day my daughter-in-law held my hand again was the day we all came home."